Hi, everybody. Welcome to our weekly Turnkey Rental Properties Facebook Live. It is not our normal day. I was about to say day and time, but it is actually our normal time. So usually this happens on Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 8 p.m. Eastern. Did I say that right? Yeah. And I completely apologize for even really the last month or 2 months. I have had the most random things happen on Mondays. Rudd, am I saying it right? Or Rude? Rudd, welcome. Yeah, so I've been seeing a dentist in Mexico and the appointments happen to be on Mondays. So that's messed me up. I was in Baltimore for the Burr plus Turnkey trip on one of the Mondays. I've just had all sorts of weird stuff on Mondays, but after today, we should be completely back to normal Monday schedule. So today is off schedule. We'll do a random Wednesday thing, but as of next week, which is let's see, 31st, 30, is that the 28th or 29th, whatever it is, we'll be back on Monday. Steve, oh, wow. Glad to see you on here. I haven't talked to you in a minute. Let's do this. Thanks for all the info. You're very welcome. I'm actually super excited to do this one. As you guys may know, last week, or you may not know because I ended up not keeping the video even on the group. On Monday, I actually sat down to do the live, and probably 10 minutes before the live was going to start, my toilet and bathtub started gurgling and overflowing. I was like, oh, good, because not only is this going to mess up my live, but plumbers also usually go home at 5. So, because this couldn't happen at noon when normal plumbing hours happen. Oh, Rudy, I apologize. Welcome. Thanks for being on here. So I had the plumbing disaster, and so I was like, oh, well, I guess I couldn't get back on because I was trying to find a late night plumber. And then last Wednesday, I tried to get on, and I think an update on I admit I have an old laptop. I'm traveling right now, so I'm not on my normal computer, but my old laptop has Windows 7, and an update happened, and for some reason, it just like wiped out my audio driver. So I started the live, and then everybody said they couldn't hear me. So then I was trying to finagle around. I finally ended up recording it like an hour late, but honestly, it was such a botch at that point. I didn't even really keep the video on the group. So with all of that said, I'm super stoked to be here today. I'm still traveling. My audio driver hopefully is working since you guys are answering. That means, is this it? Yeah. And I've got the headset, so I am traveling, but super stoked to be here. I feel like we haven't really done a whole lot of turnkey questions lately just because of the weird schedules, but I promise as of next week, we're going to get back on a normal schedule. So if you're watching this, if you have any turnkey questions, start sending them in. And I thought in the meantime, excuse me, I got so excited I sucked in some air. I would hit a couple of topics that have come up in the group over the past week or so that I thought were really good topics. One I actually hit in the live last week, but again, because it was such a wonky setup, I didn't even keep the video on. So going back a couple weeks ago, as you guys know, I started putting properties on the group for you guys to see. These are actual turnkey properties that are for sale. I apologize now because we're kind of revamping Hipster's website, so I'm not sure of the format, so it's not an official thing. The properties are coming in yet, just because we're about to change the format, and I don't want to put a bunch of links up and then them all expire. But for now, I'm putting a couple questions up or properties up, and what I love about what this is prompting is this prompting really good discussions. So the first property I put up was in St. Louis. And I'll actually kind of address a topic that I got out of that conversation in a second. But then also I put up a post, a property for, I don't know why I can't say property today, property for Dayton. And a really good discussion, not an official debate, but kind of a back and forth between some of the group members on, do they like Dayton as a market, the price of this turnkey versus like what you can do non-turnkey, and are turnkeys at a premium price. And So what I'm loving is that these are prompting really good discussions, because I know when I first started getting into real estate, I didn't know what I didn't know. So like if I looked at a property, whether I started looking at non-turnkeys, but if I started looking at turnkeys or non-turnkeys or whatever, I just didn't even know what I was looking for. So what I love about this is when I put a property up, a lot of you guys who either know about the markets or know about turnkeys or have bought properties before, or even if you haven't ever bought a property, you're asking questions like, what do you need to know? What questions do you need to be asking? What things do you need to consider as you make sure this thing is scrolling, as you are looking for properties? Like, how do you know if you're looking at a good deal? How do you know if you want to pursue this deal? How do you know what market you want to be in? You know, I'm really stoked that that's what's coming out of me putting the properties up. So I'm going to continue to do those. I think as of now, I'm going to put them up on Thursdays. If at any point you want to see a whole slew of inventory for sale, just shoot me a message either on Facebook, or you can always email me directly, Ali, ALI, at hipsterinvestments.com. Happy to connect you with the full inventory. On once a week, I'm just pulling a property to put into the group to prompt some discussion. These properties are actually for sale, so if you actually are interested in the property, message me as well. Hi, Kyle. Thanks for joining. So going back to the property from St. Louis, it was the very first property that I put up. I don't know if this was obvious to everybody reading the chain of comments, but what I pulled out of that was a really good point about, how do I want to say it? Like, pros and cons of different providers, if you will, or markets or whatever. And basically somebody was posting that they weren't digging the St. Louis market. And I was like, that's cool. And they were talking about the numbers on this deal versus St. Louis as a market versus what you're getting for it and all these things. So it's now been a couple of weeks. I don't remember exactly where the whole conversation went, but what it put into my head that I should talk to you guys about is, I mean, look, here's the deal. I hear from so many people that are like, oh, no, turnkeys, they're not good because this provider did this, or it's priced over market value, or no, that's too high of a price for this market, or, you know, it's just like, you can't judge turnkeys based on one thing that you find. And the point that I really want to drive home is, if you don't like what the provider's offering, go to another provider. First of all, I think I'm starting to sound like a broken record I'm saying this on every one of them. You should not be buying turnkeys over market value. So if there is a turnkey provider, and I don't know of any specifically because none of the ones I work with do this. Hey, Steve, thanks for joining. None of the ones I work with specifically do this, but turnkey providers should not be charging you over market value. So there's this kind of rumor around, or terminology being thrown around, that turnkeys are sold at a premium price. Well, it kind of depends on how you're looking at the word premium. They are sold at higher prices than if you buy a distressed property and you do everything yourself. Absolutely. So if you call that a premium price, yeah, then that's true. But where it should not be true is that you should not be paying over market value for a turnkey. I don't know where this rumor got started. I'm sure some turnkey providers out there, because there's a million of them, have tried to charge you over market value. But here's the thing, guys. Take the emotions out of it. Like, what I see so often, and this is completely understandable because of how hard it is to get knowledge and how hard it is to know who you're working with and all that. But if, let's say you put a turnkey property under contract for $100,000 and the appraisal comes in and the appraisal says it's only worth $80,000. Don't freak out and judge all of turnkey rental properties as being priced. They're like, oh my God, they're priced over market value. This is a ripoff. And what is this? You know, they're trying to scam me and blah, blah, blah. No, you just got a low appraisal. I mean, it's possible if you're working with any certain particular companies, maybe they're notorious for ripping people off. I don't know. But here's the thing. You get your low appraisal in, you simply just go to the seller, the turnkey provider, and say, hey, it came in low. And if the appraisal is that much lower than what you're buying the property for, they're likely either going to work with you on the price, which is not usually the case for reasons I'm about to say, but they're probably going to have you get out of that property and into a new property because their intention is not to sell it to you over what it's valued. Occasionally, it can happen very often that appraisals just come in freakishly low for no reason. So the seller may contest the first appraisal. Oftentimes, I've seen it where the seller themselves will fund a second appraisal because they have every reason to believe they know the comps, they know what the property's worth, and it is possible that appraisals just come in low. Maybe the appraiser had a bad day. Yes, that can absolutely happen. Should it? No, but it does. And so it's not a, like, you just don't go, hi, Manpreet, good to see you. You just don't have to jump off the cliff freaking out thinking, oh man, turnkeys are sold over market value. No. So like anytime anything happens, whether it's the inspection report, the appraisal, whatever happens, I don't know, anything happens, just go to the seller and ask them about it first, because most often they're going to work with you. They're going to try and figure out what's going on, and it's just that easy. Like, emotions do not have to be part of this equation. But now backtracking to what my bigger point was, no, turnkeys are not sold over market value. And if they are, you need to find a new turnkey, whether that means find a new provider to work with entirely or just a new property from that provider. And it does happen. Plenty of times providers have just shifted someone into a different property because for whatever reason the numbers aren't working. Totally cool. You don't have a penny in the pot until all of this is situated. So then, kind of going back to what I was saying, for those of you who just joined, I'm referencing when I put the first property up, it was a St. Louis property. A really cool discussion kind of came out of this is it was brought up about the numbers versus the market versus the quality of the deal, blah, blah, blah. When you go shopping for a turnkey, you might just not like everything. That's what it is. So this particular poster on the group wasn't digging this property at all, and that's fine. There's a pros and cons to everything. This is why I work with turnkey providers in several markets, because one person may love one market, they may hate another market, and another person may be completely the opposite. Like, there's something for everybody. Every market and every turnkey deal accomplishes roughly something different. In the big scheme of things, they accomplish the same things, but some markets may be a little bit more appreciation focused, some may be cash flow focused. You have markets that are focusing on suburban versus urban. You have markets that are focused on single family versus multifamily. Everything and everybody offers a slightly different thing. So, and the numbers are going to be different across the board. So my biggest message about this, I've kind of been talking in circles a little bit about what I'm trying to say, is basically, don't judge turnkeys as a whole because of one property you found or one provider you found or one market you found. Like, I actually had a lot of people approach me about that St. Louis property saying they really liked it and wanted more information, whereas someone else who was posting thought it was a terrible deal. And there's a difference between a terrible deal and a deal that maybe just doesn't fit what you're looking for. So, as the turnkey buyer, those are just kinds of things to be thinking about while you're shopping around. Is everyone's going to offer something different. You may be super comfortable in St. Louis, but not so much Chicago. Or maybe you're really comfortable in Indianapolis because people have been buying there for so long, but you're not really all that comfortable in Birmingham, or whatever it is. Or every provider offers something different. So that's why I tell people, shop around different providers, shop around different markets, because only when you do that are you going to start figuring out what is it that you like. Like, and I'll give myself an example. One thing about me is I don't like headaches at all. So I'm always willing to take a lower cap rate on a property if it is a higher quality property in a nicer area, and basically meaning less chance of headache. Some people are more numbers focused. If you want to maximize your numbers, sure, go for the cheaper property that has the higher cash flow. And if you don't mind potential headaches, and no guarantees one way or another, if you don't mind potential headaches, cool. So, what I may like or what I may really value in a property is not what someone else may really value in a property. So the more you shop around, the more you learn about turnkeys, the more you learn the differences in what everybody offers, the more well-rounded of a decision you're going to be able to make, because then when you see the property that you like and you work with the company that you feel good about, you're going to know it. Because if you only ever talk to one company and look at a couple of properties, you just don't have a comparison factor. So That is my, that is a little spiel for me. Steve says, happens in burr and flips all the time. What specifically happens? Do you mean like, oh, since this was delayed, I actually don't know when you said that. Were you talking about appraisals potentially? I could see that definitely being a thing with burr and flips. Jacob, thanks for joining. I apologize. My little scroll thing here does not automatically scroll down, and I don't know why. So a little bit delayed here. But Steve, if you want to expand on what you're talking about, happens with burrs and flips all the time, happy to talk about that. Oh, low appraisals. Yeah. And low appraisals, I mean, here's the thing. Well, oh, this actually reminds me of something that came up about the St. Louis property. This was one of my big points. The commenter mentioned the ARV, which is the after repair value. So if you do burrs or flips, you're more familiar with that term. Turnkeys, we don't use it so much, but basically it's the market value of the finished property, like rehabbed and all that kind of stuff. He said, so he looked up, actually, I don't even know how he looked up this property because I didn't provide the address. I have to go back and think about that. But basically, he said Zillow said the ARV was like 130, I think, and maybe this property was $100,000 to purchase or so. I don't know what it was. But first of all, never rely on Zillow. Like, do not do it. Like, I mean, the only thing I ever use Zillow for is if I'm really bored late night and I'm just trying to find something to do, I might Zillow all my properties and just see where their estimates are, just out of curiosity, because it'll show like a general up or down trend. But otherwise, first of all, Zillow is extremely inaccurate. But even if it were, it doesn't matter what Zillow says or what anything says until you get your appraisal. Because if you're buying a turnkey property for $100,000 and Zillow says wait, I think I got my numbers backwards. Let's say you're buying your turnkey property for 130 and Zillow says it's 100. Well, okay, cool. You're going to find that out in your due diligence period via the appraisal. So when you get the appraisal on your $130,000 turnkey property, and it comes back $100,000, first of all, you want to talk to the seller and see if that seems like a legitimate appraisal, because it's very common that low appraisals can come in. And if it is a genuine, like, actual value of this property, you don't have to buy the property, like, period. So if you're agreeing to pay 130 for a property that's worth 100, the seller's going to let you out of that, and you need to take the initiative to get out of that. So if a couple months went by while they were rehabbing or whatever, for any reason, the value on a property might drop just for the appraisal or in the moment or whatever happens. But yeah, so don't close on that property. That's one of the advantages of turnkeys, is you get to verify all these things before you close. So if you're doing all your research and all these comps are suggesting a lower price to what you're scheduled to pay for this property, again, keep the emotions out of it. It doesn't matter, because if that remains the case, once you get the appraisal, walk away from the property and get a new one. It's just that easy. So I read the insinuation as being, and it's not just this poster in this forum chain, but in forums all over the place. The insinuation is oftentimes that turnkey companies are trying to scam you or screw you or whatever. And it just doesn't, none of it matters. I mean, yes, like if a company is blatantly trying to screw you, that matters. But as far as like the numbers come in and stuff, you're verifying that stuff through the appraisals and everything else outside of the company. So that doesn't matter. But you need to know to verify those things. So ultimately, a perceived ARV, if you want to call it that, doesn't matter until you get the appraisal. With that said, because appraisals, I mean, literally an appraiser can have a bad day and be cranky and write a low appraisal. For whatever reason, low appraisals are a thing, and it just happens. And like I said earlier, you can either get a second appraisal. The seller oftentimes will actually fund that if they truly believe that the appraisal's off base. If the second one comes back and it's just is what it is, they're going to let you out of the property. So it's just that easy. I see my scrolly thing. Maybe he did a reverse image search to find it on Zillow. Oh, maybe. Very possible, and that would make sense why I didn't know that, because I don't know if I've told you guys this, but I'm actually super terrible at technology. So I've heard about that reverse image search thing, but I've never done it. So that might be possible. Tara, welcome. Glad to have you on here. Justin, did I say hi to you? I didn't see when you came in. Um, Hi, thanks for joining. It says, hi, Allie. Been reading a lot about people utilizing business credit to purchase rentals. Would you say it's better to work on getting business credit worked out before touching base with your team to get everything started? I would, yes. So I don't know exactly the context of business credit and how they're using that exactly, so I can't speak to that. But I would say that for several reasons, figure out your financing before you approach the turnkey providers. So one reason you guys may have noticed on the group that I don't share the direct names of the companies that I work with. And that is not for secrecy, that is not for anything, but over the years, one of the agreements I have with the turnkey providers is that I will make sure, I don't want to say it that way. I don't want to just blare their name out all over the place, because here's what happens. A million people who are just curious about turnkeys and they don't actually have the money to buy anything start bombarding them with questions and all sorts of stuff. And the thing with the turnkey providers, they are really good at what they do. They are busy. Like, I don't know a turnkey provider that is not working probably 15 hours a day or more. Like, they truly are very busy people. Their jobs are finding the deals, negotiating the deals, getting the deals rehabbed, putting tenants in. They have all of this stuff going on. And as you may have figured out, customer service oftentimes is not their stronger suit. Like, they're not a customer service oriented business. Their business is oriented to creating these properties and creating these investment opportunities. All of those tasks keep them so busy that they don't have time to be answering every person's question under the sun. They really don't. So that's kind of one of my roles, is I kind of do that for them. I'm happy to share any turnkey provider that I work with, but I am going to talk to you ahead of time, because I want to make sure that if I send you to those people, you are in a position to potentially buy. It doesn't mean you have to buy by any means, but if someone comes to me and says they have $0 and zero credit, there's not a whole lot that is going to be able to be done. And so if that person then goes and asks the turnkey provider 73 questions, which, if you think I'm exaggerating, I'm not. I think maybe this was years ago. I think it was in my first couple of years of working with people buying turnkeys. And was it one of my clients, I guess, sent the turnkey provider a list of 73 questions. Like, we actually counted them. And we were all just like, oh, like, what do you say in that case? Because you never want to say, like, we don't want to answer your questions, because that sounds sketchy. We do want to answer the questions, but, like, how much bandwidth do we all have? Can you imagine if we all answered 73 questions from every person who wanted to ask 73 questions? So part of what I help them with, and part of our agreement, is that I talk to people. So I say that as a little bit of a sidebar of, you can absolutely come to me while you're figuring out your situation, your financing situation. If you're going to be using business credit, or if you're borrowing money from people, if you're whatever, you can absolutely come talk to me, because what you can be doing during that phase is shopping around. I don't know if you were on here earlier, Justin. I was talking a lot about shopping around for turnkeys and how important that task in general is, to find the properties you like, figure out what you like, what you don't like, gauge different providers, learn to run numbers. There's a whole kind of, in my mind, phase of shopping around. So you could definitely be doing all of that while you're getting your financing in order. So come talk to me, come talk to anyone who works with all the providers and whatever. We can show you that stuff. We can show you inventories, everything. And then once your financing situation is official or secured, or like you're like, okay, I got the approvals, I'm ready to go, then it makes more sense to meet the turnkey providers directly. At that point, they can start showing you properties. You can figure out what you want to do, possibly go under contract for a property. So the answer to your question, you had said, would you say it's better to work on getting business credit worked out before touching base with your team to get everything started? For my team, reach out now. If you mean by your team, like if you're actually talking about me specifically, 100%, you can reach out to me now. We can be talking in the meantime while you get all that worked out. In some cases, I might be able to give you helpful hints on that kind of stuff. For people who are going to be using regular mortgages and stuff, you can be getting pre-qualified during that time. You can be doing all sorts of stuff. So all of that stuff I can absolutely help you with while you're figuring it out. But then if you're talking about like general turnkey teams or just kind of making a more general statement, yeah, you can go to turnkey providers directly at that point, but they aren't going to be and this is not all of them, because some of them do have really good customer service, but not all of them are going to be super amenable to you saying, hey, I don't actually have money right now, but I've got this thing I'm working on, because they've heard that a million times, especially with the BRRRR plus turnkeys, which I'm thinking about changing the term. I've heard the term a couple times, turnkey light. So it may be easier to spell. But the BRRRR plus turnkeys, a lot of people try and do that, where they show up, because you have to have all cash to start with those properties. So you're talking $90,000 and up cash, which you get back in 6 months. But people are trying to do creative stuff all day long. And it doesn't mean that they won't accept financing, but you can probably imagine the number of creative methods that are pitched to them that never actually go through. So that's where turnkey providers can get a little itchy and not so amenable, because they just heard every scheme under the planet that never works out. And whatever time they're investing into you, they're not investing into the properties and other clients and all this kind of stuff. So probably a super long-winded answer to your question. Melanie, awesome to see you. Yeah, so we've talked about a lot already. I have one other topic. If you guys that are just joining, keep sending your questions in. We've had some good questions already. Anything you've missed, it'll show up in the replay. I think it shows up probably not even an hour after we finish the live. But one other topic came up that I wanted to address, because I thought it was a really good topic. Someone posted about a bad property management company that came with the turnkey. I am sure if you've been following me for very long, you've heard me explain this before. And actually, I guess I kind of have a good segue into it, because I kind of already started talking about this. Turnkey providers are very good at what they do, which is finding deals, negotiating deals, neighborhood analysis, market analysis, rehabbing the deals, placing tenants, all of these things. If you look at this from a business perspective, and this is good entrepreneurship knowledge anyways, regardless of what you're doing, there are certain people who are more technical oriented. There are people who, if you've ever read the E-Myth Revisited, easily one of my business Bibles. It's a little tiny book, but it's profound. So you're going to recognize what I'm about to say if you've ever read that book. And that was the E-Myth Revisited by, is that Michael Gerber, in case you ever want to. But he talks about in any business, there are 3 roles that are required: the technician, the manager, and the entrepreneur. The difference in those skill sets are, and you don't have to be one or the other, but you need all 3 of those roles filled to operate a successful business, as he explains. The technician is exactly what it sounds like. That's the person doing the specific tasks. That would be like plumbing business, for example. The technician goes and does the work. The manager is the person who is kind of keeping things organized. This is kind of a step above the technician, not from an equality standpoint, but like they're overseeing the technicians. So like the manager in a plumbing company would be overseeing all of the technicians, and they would be the people who would be doing things like scheduling when the technicians go out, managing the technicians' shifts and hours, billing type of stuff. So if you compare just those 2 roles, you have the technicians who are really good at fixing toilets, and you have the managers who are really good at organizing and all that kind of stuff. A technician often, this is why handymen are so ungodly terrible quite often, is because they're really good at what they do. They're technicians. They're most often not managers. Like if you have worked with handymen, man knows I do. Oh, and they just make me want to scream. They are oftentimes so good at what they're doing. They can fix anything in your house. No problem is too big for them. They can do it all great. But man, if they can't return a phone call or return a text message, or they show up late, or they don't show up at all and then you never hear from them, like those things that handymen are notoriously bad at, those are the business type of things that the manager is the kind of person to deal with. So your best combination is if you have the technician, let's call it a husband and wife team. Let's say the husband's the technician, he can fix anything, and the wife kind of manages him. Maybe she returns the phone calls. I hope this isn't sounding sexist. It's not at all what I mean, but maybe she's the manager. It could be vice versa. You know, it's different skill sets. It's different types of brains. It's different whatever. You can have a technician who is pretty good at the managerial stuff, or you can have a manager who's surprisingly good at the technical stuff, but you have to understand those are two different skill sets. And then in the E-Myth, they also talk about the entrepreneur. So in a business, like the plumbing business, you've got to have the person who's got the big picture brain, who is like the forward mover, going to expand business. Maybe they franchise it. Maybe they innovate. This is where the innovation, the big ideas, all this kind of stuff happens. The entrepreneur in this case of the plumbing company is not the one fixing toilets. So this is a totally super long-winded thing, but I really want to make it clear. Turnkey companies are the technicians. They have a little bit of the manager side. They have a little bit of the entrepreneur side, depending, you know, like companies like Memphis Invest, or who are the big ones I'm thinking of, but like, you know, they have some entrepreneur brains in there because they're expanding, they innovate. You know, Memphis Invest, probably more than any of them. Unfortunately, I hate the Memphis market, so I've never invested with them. But, you know, more than anyone, they're actually kind of known for customer service, which is not normal for turnkey providers, because they obviously in their equation have people filling all of those different roles. Most turnkey providers are just the technicians. They're really primarily good at what they're good at, which is all the things I listed, but it's the properties. This is why customer service is not usually their stronger suit. I've seen more turnkey companies, and God bless them, a lot of them really do try. They'll understand that their weak point is customer service, so they'll hire somebody to be like the customer service point of contact or whatever it is. Well, if that person happens to be very naturally good at what they're doing and they can kind of manage themselves, it works out phenomenal. But because these are a bunch of technicians trying to hire a manager, they don't even know what to look for in a good manager. They don't know how to make sure that that manager is functioning as that manager should. It's just different skill sets. No right or wrong or whatever, but this is why customer service can be so bad for turnkey providers. With all of that said, if you think of all the parts of a turnkey company, obviously they offer property management. Property management has some managerial skills, a lot of them. Sorry, they have mostly, well, yeah, it's managerial, and this is where customer service falls in. There are some technical sides, like they may have to manage handymen and whatever, but this is more on the manager side versus the technician side. This is why the property management link of the whole turnkey equation is almost just, is it 100% of the time? It's the weakest link, always, because turnkey providers are not a customer service-based company because of what it is they're actually doing. They're technical based. So with that super long spiel given to you, first of all, if you have any questions about that, definitely ask me. But the reason I explain all of that is for 2 points about the property managers. Well, let me lead with a quote. Actually, this was from an old turnkey provider in Atlanta. This was the actual provider himself. And he said a quote that I have repeated for the last, when did I buy from him? 7 years ago or something. He said, I would rather own an average property with an excellent property manager than an excellent property with an average property manager. And that is 100% true, because if you could have the nicest, best, lowest risk property on the planet, and if you don't have a good property manager on it, they can tank it. They can put bad tenants in, they can do all sorts of stuff, they cannot keep up with the repairs, it can be a disaster. Not to scare you out of property management, but it oftentimes does suck that bad. So while property management is arguably one of the most important factors of the whole equation, to me, it's not necessarily required that that be super stellar coming out of buying a turnkey. Here's why. You can always change property managers. What you can't do is change the property that you bought. You can't change the neighborhood it's located in. You can't change, I mean, you can change some stuff, but not, like on a broader scale, you can't just change anything you want. You can't hire and fire your property or hire and fire tenants that easy. So the property that you buy in the turnkey equation, to me, is the most important thing. You want the rehab fully, nicely completed, up to par. You want tenants in there. You want the neighborhood to be decent. You want all of these things in place. If you have that, to me, you're set. If that's all you have, you may have some headaches down the road. But if you have that much going for you, I just sat on my cord. If you have that much going for you, you have something major going for you. Because then at that point, if you end up with property managers that come from the turnkey provider that you don't like, it doesn't matter. Fire them. Hire a new one. I don't have any of the original property managers on any of my turnkey properties that came with the property. Now, granted, when I bought, it was a while ago when there were a lot of really, really bad property managers, and the companies, turnkey companies in general, are kind of shaky. That's not so much the case now. Like, there's a lot more stability in the quality of the companies who exist today. But you don't have to keep their property manager, period. So someone posted about the property management company that comes with the US REIB properties in Kansas City. And I'm actually looking into that now because I'm trying to figure out what's going on with that, because we've worked with US REIB. But the point is, the poster was already on top of this, where he's already looking for a new property management company. I think he actually hired a new one. And that's as simple as it has to be. If they start to suck, hire a new one, because turnkey is only a method of buying a rental property. It's not a method of owning it. So once you buy a turnkey rental property, you own this rental property just like it's any other rental property. So, which means you're the boss. You can hire and fire whoever you want to. You can make decisions as you want to. Like, this is your property and you're in charge. And that carries through to the property management company. A lot of property management companies have you sign an agreement saying that you're going to be stuck with them for a year. I won't sign that agreement, or, I mean, because that's not how this works. I mean, I know some companies that have it because it's the standard contract, but they'll also let the person out because nobody wants to work with each other if they don't like each other. I mean, that's just kind of how it is. But in my mind, a property management company cannot force you to stay with them because you own the property. You're the boss. They're essentially working for you. They're more or less kind of your employee. I mean, not officially, but like a contractor type of thing. So to me, they can't keep you hanging on. So just fire the property management company if things start going bad and hire a new one. That's a whole other different conversation on, looking for new providers. But one last thing I want to say about property management is that, let's see. Oh, Steve, I must have read your mind. You're actually asking, are there contracts with property managers in regards to how long they manage? Yeah, and then perfect. It must have been like, it must have soaked in because I hadn't scrolled down to see your question, but I hope I answered that for you. Yes, it is pretty standard to see that. I usually tell them that's not happening, or, to this day, I wrote whether there's a contract in place or not. I've never heard of a property management company that didn't just let a property owner go because they don't want to work with you if you hate them. Like, you're going to make their life miserable. And if for some reason they want to keep you there, just annoy them. Just call them every day and just annoy them until they're just like, my God, go. I don't take that as official advice, but but they work for you. You're the boss. End of story. So one last thing on the property management discussion, there's always a debate, and I always hear people with different stances on this. Do you want to buy a turnkey from a turnkey rental property, assuming you are hoping the property management doesn't go belly up and you actually want a good property manager with the company? Do you want a turnkey company that offers in-house property management, or it's a third-party property manager? A lot of people, so the other term you'll hear is like the in-house one, you may hear vertically integrated, which means that in this whole turnkey equation where they're finding the properties, rehabbing the properties, putting tenants in, whatever. This company who's doing that, the vertically integrated property managers, or the in-house ones, are the ones that are part of that company. So if you have ABC Turnkeys, these property managers are part of ABC. Actually, that's a terrible analysis, because there is a company called ABC. Ignore that. XYZ, you buy from XYZ Turnkey Company, and their property managers are part of that company. They are employed by XYZ Turnkey Company. The third-party ones, let's say XYZ Turnkey Company has contracted with, what's a good name? Now I'm paranoid about what names I'm going to say. We'll call them, literally every name popping in my head right now is actually part of a turn. I was about to say Table Property Management. There's Table Turnkeys. I'm actually sitting at a table with a jigsaw puzzle. So we'll call them puzzle property managers. So XYZ Turnkey Company approaches puzzle, this is terrible, terrible words. The property management company, they say, hey, listen, we're going to be selling a lot of properties. We want you to manage them. We want to give you all of our properties. We want you to be exclusive to us, where you focus on our company. So we're going to contract with you, and we're going to create this relationship. That's what the third-party property manager setup looks like, versus the vertically integrated, who is actually employed and part of the turnkey company. To me, there's no one version that is better than the other. Very often, and I honestly think this happened just because people heard it and they thought it sounded logical, where everyone's like, oh, I definitely want a vertically integrated property manager. I want in-house property management for sure. And there are some pros to that. However, to me, there are some cons. And here's my pros and cons list about vertically integrated property managers versus third-party property managers when it comes to buying a turnkey. Steve, it's the Lubbock vibe. That's true. There's not many of us Lubbock people around here, but so you're probably right. Here's my pros and cons list. The reason that people think in-house property managers or vertically integrated property managers are the best is because, and this in theory should be true, but keep in mind the in theory part. The idea is that because they're vertically integrated in the company, they're going to have more incentive to perform properly, because turnkey providers work with investors. Turnkey providers really rely on repeat business. Turnkey providers are not trying to sell one property to one investor over and over and over and over. If they secure one investor, investors most often buy more than one property. I think statistically, the average primary home buyer buys one property every 7 years. The average investor buys 2 properties a year. So you can imagine that a turnkey provider's motivation is to please said investor. So because it's cheaper for them and easier for them to sell repeat properties do repeat business with these investors versus gaining new clients. So a turnkey provider wants to impress you, the investor, because they want you to come back and buy more, because most investors are going to come back and buy more, or they're going to buy more properties. So the idea being that if the property managers are included in this business, they are working with the same incentive. And even more so, because let's think about it. Let's say you buy a property from XYZ Turnkey Company, and their property management is terrible. Do you think you're going to ever buy from XYZ Turnkey Company again? No, because that's like your worst nightmare. Bad property managers are the biggest headache on the planet. So if their property managers drop the ball, they're going to lose you as a client. So therefore, from the top down, the words of wisdom to everyone is like, hey, seriously, you better perform. Like, hardcore, because if the property managers don't perform, you're going to cost us all of our repeat business, which is 100% true in theory. You would think that this would be true, but the way turnkey providers can perform in general, you would think that they forgot their own incentives, because they oftentimes won't please an investor, period, with rehabs or whatever it is, in order to get that repeat business. They don't always do that. So That's why people tend to think in-house and vertically integrated property managers are the best, because they have the greatest incentive to perform properly, because the turnkey company as a whole wants your repeat business. The downside, in my mind, and none of this is official, this is just my interpretation of the experiences that I've seen. The downside goes back to that whole big conversation about what turnkey providers' strengths really are. And they're not customer service, and they're not usually the managerial side. These guys are technicians. They're good at what they do. They really are only providing property management because they have to for the business model. It's not because they're good at it. It's, they're good at the other 80% of the equation. They're not good at this, but they need to offer it for you, because anyone buying a turnkey rental property, it's got to come with property management. So that's the downside. Is the upside being that they're super incentivized to perform well, so they'll get your repeat business. The downside being that truly, I can't think of worse people to set up a property management structure, because these guys' skills are in something completely different and unrelated. Not to say it can't be done, but it's a huge thing. Like the property managers that oftentimes come with turnkeys, when it's an in-house situation, property management is not their specialty. Like if you go sign on with a property management like Renter's Warehouse, I was actually going to mention that in the Kansas City discussion. Apparently Renter's Warehouse, they are, I think, a national firm, or they're in a lot of locations. Their one and only focus is property management. Therefore, they probably have some pretty decent systems going, because that's all they're doing. That's where their skill set is. That's what their business offers. Turnkey providers, not the case. So now if you kind of take that over to the third party property management structure, meaning the turnkey company has now contracted with a property management company to do it, here's the pros and cons. The cons being, in theory, just like with the pros of the other one, in theory, they wouldn't have as much incentive to perform, because that property management really could care less if you ever buy from that turnkey provider again, because their businesses are completely separate. So in theory, they wouldn't have the same incentive to perform well. That's the downside, perceived downside. Whether it's true or not, who knows, but perceived downside. The major upside being what I just said about Renter's Warehouse. The upside being they are actually a property management company. That's where their skills are. That's where their specialties are. They're not distracted by all these other parts of this turnkey equation. They're just focused on property management. Therefore, chances are their systems may be better. They know more of what they're talking about. Like they're just more well-versed in property management. So you have these two different options now. Buy a turnkey property from a company who has in-house or vertically integrated property management, or buy a turnkey from a turnkey company who is contracted with a third-party property manager. What's the right answer? There's pros and cons to both. To me, the right answer is, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. To me, it's not about where the property management company stems from, whether it's a turnkey company or themselves. It's about the property management company in general. How's their communication? What are their systems? I don't care who you are. Tell me what your systems are. Are you going to put the smack down on a tenant who doesn't pay you on time? It's that skill set that I'm looking for. I could care less how they're attached to the turnkey company. It's not even my business. I just don't care. What I care about is whether they're going to manage my property or not. So kind of highlighting this whole blank. Oh, apparently it's that time of day. This whole property management discussion, which I thought was awesome when the post came up about U.S. Reeves property management company not performing well, here's the takeaways. Number one, part of number one. Number one takeaway is you as the property owner absolutely have the right to fire any property manager on your property and hire a new one. That goes for turnkey property managers also. You're not tied to these guys. You don't have any obligation to these guys. They just came with a property. That doesn't mean that you can't make the decision. They don't make the decisions for you. They're not the boss. You are. With that said, here's let me give you my takeaways, and then I'll give you my biggest takeaway. Number two takeaway is, what's better, in-house property management or third-party property management when it comes to what the turnkey companies offer? to me, it's a wash because there's pros and cons to both. To me, they pretty much balance out. I don't see one option being notably better than the other. So to me, it's about the property management company themselves. Based on all of that, here's my recommendation. As far as, let's say you're shopping for a turnkey property, you find one, you're a little itchy about property management, you're not totally sure how to vet them. Actually, that question came up, was in my messenger or somewhere. Like, what questions do you ask? Maybe it was my email. What questions do you ask a turnkey's property manager to know if they're good or not? Here's my thing, or here's my recommendation. I always recommend when you buy a turnkey rental property to stick with the property manager who comes with the property, at least for the time that any of your guarantees are active. So for example, most turnkey providers offer a scope of work warranty. So if between now and 90 days or 6 months or whatever the scope of work warranty is, something is wrong with the property that should have been dealt with in the rehab, the turnkey seller will fix it for you for free because it's on them. They missed it. Oops, they're bad. It's called the scope of work warranty. I don't know why my thing's dinging. Hi Donaldson, thanks for joining. But if, let's say you buy a turnkey property and the scope of work warranty is good for 6 months. And that is usually only valid if you use the property managers who come with the property. So if you buy a turnkey rental property and you immediately fire that property management company and get your own, that's fine, but you're going to lose that scope of work warranty. And the reason for that in that particular case is because the turnkey seller doesn't know, when they know who the property managers are, they know that they're going to fix things or report things or whatever within, basically a new property management company, they don't know what they're doing to the property. They may do their own fix and then it breaks and then you come back to them saying, oh, this should have been done in the rehab, when, they just don't have a way of keeping tabs on what's going on if you use a new property management company. So, and it may, in some cases, you might get a rental guarantee. Most people don't do that now, but whatever the guarantees are not active or valid if you switch property managers. So my recommendation is stick with the property manager who comes with the property for at least the amount of time that your guarantees are valid. Or, yeah, valid's the right word. Or active, I should say. During that time, gauge how you like them. How's it running? How's the communication? Are you having any challenges? Are you noticing, like weird things? Are you enjoying working with them? Use that as kind of like your trial period. So let's say your scope of work warranty is 6 months. Then coming up to the 6-month mark, what's your assessment? Do you like them? Have they worked out well? If they have, keep on with them. And if you haven't enjoyed them, start shopping around. Say at the 5-month mark, start shopping around for someone to now take over that property for you, a new property management company. So that's my recommendation. People ask me all the time, should I stick with the property managers? I say yes, at least for the time that your guarantees are active or valid, because you don't want to miss out on those. I feel like I just gave you there were a lot of long-winded rambles in there. I hope apparently I had a lot in my head about those topics. Maybe that's what happens when I read a question or topic in a week or two prior to this. Then I've been stewing on it for a while. But those are all super common questions that I get about property managers, about shopping for turnkeys. Was there anything else? Do you guys have any questions on any of that I said? Let me know. And it's actually 5:53 now, so we'll probably start wrapping up here. So let me know if you have any questions based on anything I said. Otherwise, this is the last week that we're going to be out on a weird schedule. So plan to have another one of these back at the normal day and time, Monday. All Mondays. Mondays at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We will start that next Monday. Yeah, I guess next Monday. It's a little bit close. But yeah, we'll come up with some cool topics. I will post another turnkey property for sale tomorrow from a new market that we haven't talked about. We haven't mentioned the Burr plus Turnkeys in a while. If you are still interested in those are selling like hotcakes right now. Super fun opportunity. I was really appreciative that I got to go on that trip, so definitely hit me up for that. I'll leave you with this if you guys don't have any last questions. I put a post up on was that last night? I said, if you've researched turnkey providers or marketers, who's been most impressive to you? I want to make sure I know all the good ones. The reason for this question is a little bit multifaceted. Number one, I want to know what things you guys are liking and appreciating about turnkeys that companies are offering, because I want to make sure that I'm able to offer you guys that stuff. Or, you know, if the something I'm working with isn't quite, you know, jiving with you guys, I want to know about, because I want to work with the best people too. I'm not tied to one company or another. Like, I have total free reign. I can work with who I want to. I don't have to work with who I don't want to. So I want to make sure that I work with the best people for you guys, well, and for myself, but for you guys too. So I actually, in this, I was pretty stoked to find, I had never heard about was it Table Investments, whoever the Oklahoma City people are. So I'm absolutely going to look into them. I am super curious. No, we'll leave that for Monday, actually. I'll leave you in suspense about what I was just going to say on that one. So, excuse me. Oh, I got excited again and choked on air again. So I'm going to leave you guys with that. It doesn't look like we have any last questions for today. Thank you guys for joining on the weird day. I apologize again. I was at the dentist for the third time in 6 weeks on a Monday. And of course, it was the time I go to the dentist in Mexico, so I have to tack on a road trip to that from Los Angeles. So next Monday, 5 p.m., 8 p.m., 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 8 p.m. Eastern. I will see you guys there. Keep your questions coming. We just passed 400 people in the group. I'm super stoked. I had no idea this group would take off like this. I had no idea I'd be doing Facebook Lives. I had no idea that you guys would be interested in all of this information and asking awesome questions. So thank you for all of it. Definitely don't hold back. Don't be shy. Even if you're at the very beginning stages of researching turnkeys, there's no such thing as a stupid question. So send all your questions over, whether it's to me directly, but preferably in the group, because chances are if you have the question, other people have the same question. So happy to answer those. Keep the conversations going, and I will see you guys on Monday. All right. Talk to you soon.